All right, well, welcome to the show, everybody. Usually the break ends at about three past the hour, so I guess I'm a little late coming in, but I guess that's all right. You're here on the For Liberty Radio Show. I am your host, Nick, here at freedomslits.com and revolution.radio. Be sure to check out our website. Be sure to check out the advertisers on there and pick up some of their products. Check out the Late Night Hawks deal for, I think it's now 15,000 seeds for $100. And if you got some spare change in your pocket, be sure to donate it our way and help keep us on the air. We are completely listener supported. So everything that you can get our way really helps us out a lot. Tonight, I got a guest that I've been wanting to have on for quite a long time now, and I finally got a chance to get a hold of him. He's running for president for the Libertarian Party. And he is Vermin Supreme. So, Vermin, welcome to the show.
Greetings, my fellow Americans and others. As your president, I have promised to engage in hostilities only with those powers that I deem to be a real and immediate danger to our peace-loving nation. And that is why I have ordered the Strategic Space Force Air Command to begin the bombing of Narnia in 5 minutes. If we do not fight them in their dimension there, we will have no choice but to fight them in our dimension here. We will not stop until we have destroyed Middle Earth and the last orc is dead. In this time of need, we must unite as a nation. I hope you will all pray for all our fearsome flying unmanned killer robot pony drones as they rain fire and death upon our subhuman enemy and various innocent wedding parties. May our brave soldiers not be afflicted by carpal tunnel syndrome while conducting these long-distance atrocities or terrible nightmares from the horror they must inflict. Thank you. Howdy, Nick.
How's it going? How's your campaign going this year?
Oh, it is like gangbusters. This year is a very interesting year. This campaign, if you will, is certainly, if not the culmination of 30 years of campaigning for the presidency, at least a very exciting next level extension of it. It's quite arguable that every previous campaign was for the lulz, running as a Republican or Democrat or whatever, even if I did come in fourth and third in the New Hampshire primary and all that good stuff. This year is a very different year. It's a year that I'm actually running. It's arguably my first real campaign. I have a campaign staff, a campaign manager. I have a 527 political organization that has raised over $10,000 for my campaign. I have attended numerous libertarian state party conventions simply because my campaign staff tells me that is what you must do if you are seriously seeking the Libertarian Party nomination, which I am. And things are going very well. Twitter metrics are up. It's good. It's good. It's really good. It's crazy good. I got to tell you.
So
you thought it was good before. It's even better now.
I thought it was great before. I think it's even better now. But here's the thing. Because you ran on the Republican Party ticket before. You ran on the Democrat ticket before. So what made you choose the Libertarian Party this time?
Well, essentially, all my previous campaigns, I was simply, flying a flag of convenience. And the only calculations that I might make was, what the field was like. And ultimately, it was my whole campaign primarily existed of getting on the ballot up in New Hampshire during the primary, and then just sort of glomming all the media attention that's available up there and trying to harass as many mainstream candidates as I could interact with, and creating all this spontaneous improv moments in the streets with different campaign supporters and all of these things, and that was that. That was pretty much the entirety of the campaign. That would be the peak, and then I would wait until the conventions where I would go and do my rodeo clown cop interaction bullshit that I like to do,
Right.
and maybe the inauguration. So it was definitely, it followed the same script every year. The primary, the conventions, and then the inauguration. And it was always very different, and it was always very successful. I've always managed to define success in a way that I would be successful. And it's ultimately, it's always been, if you're not in it to win it, then you can't possibly lose. Now, in 2016, things got a little different for me. Members of the Libertarian Party reached out to me in various capacity. Boomer Shannon out in California wanted to do a fundraiser with me for his Southern California Libertarians, and we did that. And then Trent Soms, who was in charge, he was head of the Libertarian Youth Caucus for a good chunk of time, reached out and invited me to the International Students for Liberty Conference. They invited me down there to essentially disrupt their president's opening remarks in a somewhat staged fashion. But it went over very well, and the amount of love that I was getting from all these libertarian kids made me seriously re-examine some of my preconceptions that I may have had about libertarians and the party. Then I made it down to Orlando for the National Convention of 2016, and that was really an eye-opener. It was pretty amazing. Essentially, I was able to get away with things that I would never have been able to get away with at any other party's convention.
Right.
During the Bill Weld nomination, I was parading around the convention floor with a chair high above my head, high above my boot. And I was sort of referencing the Bernie Bros chair throwing incident that had maybe allegedly happened recently to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody really cared. Nobody really, people seem to enjoy my zany antics, or at least half of them that did. The other half, maybe not so much, but the half that liked me being there very much enjoyed the fact that the other half did not like it. And that was an exciting revelation to me, that I might be a little bit of a wedge in the party, perhaps. But I started to do a little bit of inspection. I started to familiarize myself with the Libertarian Party platform, and I discovered that I really had a lot in common with it. I don't. It's no secret, but I'm come from a left anarchist background and perspective,
right.
And yet I was very easily able to dovetail most of my beliefs into the Libertarian Party platform planks. I've been a nonviolent direct action activist and done trainings for many years, and of course that dovetails to the non-aggression principle, right. The whole idea of nonviolence, the belief in the individual and the autonomy of the self, and the danger of the state, and then explicitly being against war and wars of aggression, and explicitly being against the surveillance state and against the police state, and it's the only political party that is anti-authoritarian and explicitly anti-government.
And that's one of the things about the Libertarian Party itself is, if you're looking at it from the left, libertarians are extremely right, and if you're looking at it from the right, libertarians are extremely left. And neither the Republicans or Democrats on either those side of the spectrums, they don't get anything right. They've been screwing everything up for over 150 to 200 years.
Oh,
so because when I first started looking into the Libertarian Party, I was just kind of like, well, this actually sounds right to me. As I've been involved with the Republican Party before, and I found out what a bunch of dirtbags they are, and I absolutely despised what the Democrats are direction that they've been going in. So, the Libertarian Party, if you're a left-wing anarchist, coming from that point of view. I don't see how the Libertarian Party could possibly fail with your point of view.
Exactly. And, it was very surprising. And, of course, I, like many people, just sort of had this knee-jerk distaste for libertarians based on the preconceived stereotypes that are promoted about them, and the selfishness and the greed and the I got mine and fuck you and all that stuff. But, of course, it was out of a space of prejudgment and
Right.
not knowing any real libertarians. I really started working, I guess, in some capacity with libertarians during the New Hampshire primary, probably in '08 during the Ron Paul run, and that brought a whole bunch of libertarian supporters up there, and that was sort of the original Ron Paul Tea Party with the tri-corner hats and all that, and we had a heck of a time, running in the streets together, haranguing other candidates, and banging on the windows of Frank Luntz as he was conducting a live poll during one of the debates, and his subjects were turning the dials. And we were outside of this restaurant where it was conducting, and we discovered that if we were loud enough and banged on the windows enough, we could watch the needles jump every time we did that.
Right.
It was also the time that I discovered that if I put my bullhorn up against the glass window, oh yeah, you could hear me inside. And so we were totally screwing with Luntz and all of those things, and so that was cool. It's always nice to get to know some people, and then in 2012, at that point the Free State Project was sort of in full swing, and of course that was also the Occupy the primary, and that was sort of the Occupy Wall Street's one of their last big hurrahs. We mobilized a bunch of people to come up to the New Hampshire primary and try and cluster fuck up the works there. And the nice thing about New Hampshire is that it's a small enough state, and all the activists know each other. And so we had these events protesting, Newt and Santorum and who all the other assholes that were running there that year. And there would be a whole bunch of occupiers, and there would be a whole bunch of Free State libertarians protesting the same candidates, perhaps from slightly different perspectives. And it was great fun. The people know each other. They respect each other. They work together on projects that they have mutual interests in. And we were able to shut down one of Newt Gingrich's event just because we surrounded the place essentially, and we're creating such a ruckus that Newt, his handlers thought it wasn't safe or whatever, and took their candidate away.
What did they think you were going to do?
Well, I just don't know. Who knows? The state is and the statists are always really paranoid about what might happen.
Right. Yeah, because I remember when I first got involved with the Ron Paul campaigns was in 2011. And I met people who were some of the originators of the Tea Party, the original Tea Party movement.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I was surprised at how fast that movement got co-opted by the Republican Party.
That was pretty tricky.
Yeah. I mean, they just took it over in a heartbeat. And the next thing you know, they're putting Sarah Palin up there as the leader of the Republican Party. And I was talking to some of the originators of it, and they were just like, wait, when the hell did Sarah Palin become our leader all of a sudden? We're not that kind of a movement. We're grassroots. But nope, they took it over. Everybody bought into the fact, or not the fact, but the fantasy that Republican Party was now the Tea Party. And it was just like, okay, that's over.
Yeah, for sure. That was a pretty amazing quick co-option. And another beautiful thing about 2012 is my campaign headquarters in New Hampshire was at a Libertarian woman's house, a member of the Free State Project, and she had been involved in an accident and had become paralyzed, and I was made very much aware of the compassion and caring of the Libertarian community, And that was something that I was eye-opening to me. But once again, because I had been fed and believed all these things that simply weren't true. And so just the fact that that the people were willing to help take care of their own and create a position and make people masters of their own destiny, if you will,
Right.
with a little bit of help. It was a very eye-opening thing for me.
Right. Now, just out of curiosity, and this is just a very quick question: how did you get started with the boot on the head?
Well, that's a very, very simple question, actually.
Mm.
I was at. Are you familiar with the Rainbow Family of Living, Love, and Light and the annual rainbow gatherings that the hippies, if you will, have in the woods?
I think I've heard of them. It's been a while since I've heard about it.
Okay, well, me and my wife have been attending them for probably close to 30 years now.
Okay.
Every year in a different national forest. The family, Rainbow Family, uses the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution as their permit. There has been major turf battles over the years between the feds and the National Forest Service wanting to have a permit for the people gathering on the public land. And the gatherers have always maintained that no one can sign a permit on behalf of anybody else
Right.
because no one can represent all these people. And so that's a huge bone of contention. And sometimes they've bullied people into signing permits. And essentially, it's gone to the Supreme Court a couple times, different permit schemes. And we, as an unaffiliated disorganization, have prevailed every time. Essentially, how it operates, picture, if you will, in your mind, 3,000 to 4,000 people sitting in concentric circles. It's a dinner circle. All of a sudden, out of the woods come 5-gallon buckets. All these people carrying 5-gallon buckets of food. There's up to 100 different kitchens in the woods. It's sort of somewhere between Gilligan's Island and the Flintstones, maybe. Picture in your mind.
sounds like it'd be a lot of fun.
Yes, and so everybody starts getting fed. Announcements are made about whatever entertainment events might be occurring that evening, or safety cautions, or predator alerts, or whatever information needs to be conveyed. Also, that's a time when the magic hat goes around, because it's a non-commercial event. Because if it was a commercial event, it would totally be under a whole different set of regulations.
Right.
There are bartering circles and all of these things. So the magic hat goes around. People throw their money into the hat because they can't buy anything other than the slight gray market that might be occurring here and there. Then that money is counted by the banking council, and the banking council is totally transparent. Anybody can join it. Then the next morning, the money goes to the supply council. The kitchen council representatives from all these 100 kitchens come together with their shopping lists and their needs and their concerns. That is given to supply. Supply goes into town with the money, comes back with the supplies, goes out to the kitchens. Kitchen comes and gets all their stuff, and they make food. And then it is repeated over and over again, day after day.
Okay.
It's an amazing layout. It's also the money goes towards reseeding. After such a large impact gathering, it is cleaned up to the last cigarette butt. Shitters are covered and disappeared. Paths are compacted. Areas are broken up and reseeded. Water bars are put in where they might be needed. The people, the gatherers, and the cleanup crew interface very strongly with the resource people of the Forest Service, because they know what's best in their forest. But we definitely have a serious problem with the LEOs, the law enforcement organization officers of the Incident Command Team. Essentially, every year the National Forest Service will spend up $750,000 up to $1 million on a specific task force, whose main purpose is to come and harass this free assembly, this temporary autonomous zone that occurs in the woods. And it's an anarchistic organism. in the fact that no one is in charge. The only reason that it happens is because people come together and make it happen. If you want to, and there's a million different tasks, from digging shitters to chopping vegetables to,
and it's all freedom of association by people who want to be joined together in this group. I mean,
absolutely.
And nobody's being forced in it. Nobody's being forced out of it.
Not at all. Now, of course, in some instances, because many years, it operates on a lot of different levels. There's just it depends who you are, what you're looking for, what kind of reality you want to make experience. There's everything from new age woo hippies to street crusty punks to earth firsters to just libertarians to doctors to lawyers, just all sorts of walks of life. There's like the Center for Alternative Living Medicine that helps people with having health issues. There are talent shows that are going on all the time, and just a lot of campfires everywhere, and sing-alongs, and it's a wonderful place. And I learned many valuable lessons that really helped make me the person that I am today.
Okay, great. So out of all of that, how did you wind up with the boot?
Yes. Well, back to the boot, of course. It was at a rainbow gathering, and it was a rainy day, and I had a pair of galoshes, and I was going to put them on my feet, and I put one on my foot, but for some reason, I put the other one on my head, and my foot got wet, but my head stayed dry, and people really, really liked it. They had a real appreciation for it, and I started wearing it primarily when I was campaigning, and there's magic in that boot, and yes, of course, it's lined with tinfoil. Got to keep those space graders out,
of course.
And the beautiful thing about the boot is, it's a signifier. Number one, if I'm wearing the boot, people understand pretty quickly that what they may be receiving may not be linear in the least. It just might be crazy.
Right.
I tell the media sometimes that the boot is a pile of shit, and that they are the flies that buzz around it. Obviously, it's a very simple, it's an elegant, and it's a very effective device. It has allowed me to amplify my free speech and reach millions and millions of people. So it is definitely it is a magical boot. And I think one of my favorite parts about it is that you could take a picture of me with wearing that boot in any place, anytime, any crowd, any situation, and you show it to some kids and say, "Hey, kid, what's wrong with this picture?" And they will know pretty quick that man has a boot on his head.
So yes, exactly. Okay, so after all of that, so what was because you've been involved in running for running for president specifically since the 1980s.
Yes, sir.
So what got you into running for president in the first place? Because you'd figure somebody who's a libertarian anarchist or at least left-wing anarchist would not want to be involved in that kind of politics to begin with. So what was the first thing that got you in?
Well, I think the important thing to understand, of course, is that it is facetious, and that it is it's a niche that I have found. Running for president is because it is running for president. It's a national thing. It's an international thing, and by going up to the New Hampshire primary, it was very easy to hijack vast amounts of media interest just by being an interesting sideshow to their circus.
Nice.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about running for president is it's a self-declarative statement. Anybody can run for president, and all it takes is saying that you're running for president. Once you say you are running for president, it becomes a fact in the real world, and nobody can disprove it because it's true. Now, maybe nobody votes for you. Maybe you don't raise any money. Maybe you don't tell too many people about it. But the mere fact that you say you are. You've instantly created your own reality. And so there is that. My first run in 1987, mayor of Baltimore, Maryland. Ultimately, it wasn't a political act at all. It was out of complete boredom. I had been doing some bookings and promotions at some nightclubs, but that had played out, and I had no reason to be in Baltimore. But I thought maybe that would be an interesting project. So I just over a couple pitchers of cheap beer at the Two Crazy Greeks, I said, "Damn it, I'm running for mayor." And at that time, I had already become Vermin Supreme by name, and many people were knowing me by that. And at the time, I was, all booking agents were Vermin, all club owners Vermin, and I was going to be the Vermin Supreme. And it was just a short leap to politics. All politicians are vermin, and I am the Vermin Supreme.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it worked really well like that. Shortly after I announced my candidacy for mayor of Baltimore, Maryland, I ended up leaving Maryland, Baltimore, also because I was so played out on it. And the Great Peace March for Global Nuclear Disarmament, which was a march from L.A. to D.C. back in 1986, arrived in Baltimore. It caught me by surprise. I didn't know that it was a thing. And then when I went down to Memorial Stadium and saw this amazing city, it was a mobile city. There was like 5,000 people marching 20 miles a day down the road at that point. And there was like all this equipment. There was semi-trailer trucks that were hauling the belongings of the people that were on the march. There was like porta potty trucks. There was honey trucks that would pump out the porta potty trucks. There was several kitchen trailers and prep trailers and information trailers and water trailers.
Man, it sounds like a Grateful Dead concert.
And school buses that were there was kids on this march, and so they actually had schools, K through 12 and high school and a middle school bus, and it had a mobile zip code, and it was reminiscent of that, but it was certainly more of a political protest,
right?
And it was very attractive to me, this idea of people making this protest a mobile community, if you will, that was marching from town to town and city to city to make their feelings and wishes and demands to be known. And so when that came through Baltimore, I ran down the thrift store, bought a sleeping bag, grabbed some clean clothes, and started walking with them. And that was really a turning point in my life. It's where I met a lot of serious activists and anarchists and folks who were trying to make things different and change things. And a group spun off of that called Seeds of Peace. They were able to get some funds together and purchased a kitchen trailer and a water trailer and a porta potty trailer, just enough stuff to move, several hundred people down the road. And so I started doing these marches down to Kings Bay, Georgia, where the Trident missiles were based, down to Cape Canaveral, where they were testing them. And then Cape Canaveral, a whole bunch of people infiltrated, did backcountry actions in an attempt to disrupt some of the testing, and then that led me to going to the Nevada nuclear test site on a regular basis, where tens of thousands of people were getting arrested to protest the nuclear testing that was going on, and affinity groups were going backcountry trying to invade the Mercury, the city that was in there, and the test sites. It was very prior to Area 51, but considerably more successful in terms of invading a national security zone, I will say.
Right, I think so.
And so I was starting to, attend all these national political demonstrations and started to get a little bit known by campaigning at them. It was also the same time that I started going to the Rainbow Gatherings. And during those days, the first few years, I was learning to be a clown and continuing to be an entertainer on the stage and all of these things. And after a few years at the Rainbow Gathering, I realized that one of the functions that we also provide for ourselves is security, a very important function. And that it takes place in the form of neighborhood watches and peacekeepers. Shante Sinas is what we call ourselves in our Sanskrit cultural appropriation word phrase. But one of the functions that we also, and essentially it's crisis intervention. It's glorified camp counseling, essentially. It's just trying to keep things smooth, trying to take care of domestic disturbances or disputes that people might have. And of course, these can also be settled in the council process at the gathering. But one of the functions we also provide is escorts or we escort. I'm not saying we would provide sex workers. No.
Yeah, I was going to mention that in just 1 second, but I tried to let you finish the thought there.
For the media that walk through and for the police. And so I found myself walking with like half a dozen, Alabama state troopers for an 8-hour shift and trying to smooth things out and keep them out of trouble and keep the hippies out of trouble and propagandize the cops and trying to explain to them what the hell they were experiencing because, in their training, they're totally lied to. And so I would just spend a lot of time doing this. And in this time, that's where I started to learn cop wrangling, wrangling cops in using the clowning and the humor and the crisis intervention skills to deal with these. And then I was able to bring that particular skill out into riot world and protest world, and be able to use my clowning skills and my humor skills and the running for president skill and all of these things to diffuse situations, tense situations between cops and protesters.
Yeah,
because
that's one of the things that the police are not trained for, and I've gone over this with a friend of mine who was special ops. And one of the things that they are taught when they're going overseas is to de-escalate situations. The police are never taught how to do that. And there's multiple examples of the police, whether they realize it or not, it goes back to their training. They're not taught to de-escalate a situation. They always end up seeming to make it worse.
Absolutely. And I've tried to deconstruct that for them. I do real-time deconstruction of the situation. I explain to them how, just showing up in their riot suits is a passively aggressive statement. They're setting the tone for things. I also call a lot of riot control manuals from the military, from the state police, from the county police, wherever I can find a good riot control manual. And I edit them for my own purposes, but for clarity and brevity. And I try and read them to the police. And there's like just some beautiful things. There's this FBI bulletin that I like to read that says, police show up with their riot gear and all this scary stuff. And this has an intimidating effect on the crowd for about 2 minutes. And then the shields become missile magnets. The crowd, barring nothing, throw some shit, and without a contingency plan, the order is given to attack, and they lose control of the situation.
Right.
And so I like to really let them know what I expect of them as my oppressors, if you will. Because I expect some professional behavior. I also like to encourage a little mutiny. I like to let them know that they're COs are putting them in dangerous situations. The cops are, they are a captive audience. Once they are in that line, they are hot, they are sweaty, they may be chafing, they might have to piss, but they can't even piss until they get some sort of replacement. And so they are just there.
I mean, they could.
I guess they could. So, I like to use cops for props and have fun with them, and I will dehumanize. I will rehumanize the protesters in the cops' eyes, and rehumanize the cops in the protesters' eyes, and just try and get everybody on the same page, and see if we can't get out of there without any insane, hairy, violent cop riot bullshit situations.
Right.
And I've had a lot of luck with it over the years. I've gotten to a point where a lot of times I can sort of demand to see the commanding officer, and sometimes he'll come out and talk to me, and I'll try and find out what the fuck they're trying to accomplish, And if I think it's in the if it's in the realm of public safety, I might share that information with the with the preface that it's coming, that's what the cops would like. But one of the key things is avoiding crowd panic. I mean, crowd panic is something that can be very dangerous. If a crowd thinks that if the cops start charging and the people start running, people could get hurt very easily. So part of this whole glorified camp counseling thing is simply, letting the people know, walk, don't run, letting them know the effects of some of the chemical weapons and crowd control weapons, and, take out your contact lenses, people, because you could get sprayed with pepper spray. It would not be good.
I'm wondering if part of the training that the police are receiving now is to actually panic the crowd in order to escalate the situation where they can escalate their use of force.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a simple thing for them to create that panic with just a flash bang grenade, boom,
right.
I mean, or start spraying the pepper spray. It's very easy for them to escalate it to levels beyond that than anything the crowd could do to them. Really, the way they are all turtle suited up and all.
So and that's not the way it used to be either, because I know my dad was a cop way back in the 70s, and they never had riot gear like what they have now.
No. I mean, if they come out with the soft hats and the soft suits, I mean, that sets a tone. I mean, there's right. A very clear and distinct difference between what the messages they're trying to put out there.
Right. Now, here's one of the other things that I also I want to touch on, because I was watching some of your opening statements during some debates. I guess they were debates, or they were just meetings. I get, for whatever it was, they had press there, and they were asking you to give your opening statement. And some of your opening statements were hilarious, but when I really started listening to it, and I don't know if this was your intention or not, but it seemed to me like you were really holding a mirror up to the two major parties and basically showing how bad they really were. When you say something like to the effect of, I'm running for president because I know how to run your life better than you do, and I'm going to make you all these promises that I'm never going to keep.
Oh, yes. I'm a friendly fascist, a tyrant that you can trust, and you should let me run your life because I do know what is best for you.
Yeah, I mean, that really was just turning the mirror on the Democrat and the Republican parties.
And once again, that's the two things I do. The running for president thing, which is essentially it's like pissing on fish in a barrel, and the street rodeo clown thing, which is always much more immediate and much more exciting. But like I say, I've just found this very simple niche, this running for president thing. It's gotten me a whole lot of attention, and the mandatory toothbrushing laws, and
that was funny.
Oh yes, Nick. I believe me, I am a highly respected political satirist, as funny as it is. But yes, and it's gotten to a point where even the other candidates get it. Ted Cruz was able to turn the whole mandatory toothbrushing law thing inside out. I was badgering him about that up in New Hampshire in 2016, and he got it right away. He knew I was talking about the nanny state. He knew I was talking about government interference and the secret dental police and dental reeducation centers and preventative dental maintenance detention facilities. And I've been railing about these the fascist impulse in America for years.
Right.
And it's a beautiful thing to finally see it come to pass.
Well, it's funny to see that. It's nice to see that somebody actually gets it, because when you speak to some of these elected representatives, and the ones especially when during an election season, they really do kind of take themselves way too seriously.
Oh yeah, and Chris Christie, he understood he came out foursquare against he was against free ponies, totally against free ponies. And so I started yelling pony hater and giving him all this crap. And later during the encounter, I said, Governor Christie, why do you hate ponies? And he says, I don't hate all ponies. I just hate free ponies. You have to earn your pony.
That's funny.
So, yeah, if you haven't seen those videos, YouTube search Vermin Supreme and Ted Cruz for the one, and Vermin Supreme, Chris Christie for the other. Because, yeah, it was pretty funny. Pretty funny.
Yeah, well, like I said, at least some of them have a sense of humor, because some of them don't.
So true.
And oh no, now it just escaped me. I just had something I was gonna bring up, and now I just forgot what it was, because we got onto the pony thing. How did you come up with the pony idea anyway?
Back in the day, I was doing a lot of protests, and one of the things I would do would sort of be chant killing. I'd want to kill the chants pretty hard. And so, one of the chants was, what do we want? And whatever they're yelling at the time, I would start inserting the word ponies. And when do we want them now? And that got to the point that became free ponies. And then the free ponies became the the pony identification system. You must have your pony with you at all times. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So it became, all about the free ponies, and, obviously the toothbrushing and the nanny state and the free stuff. And no, I've tried to deconstruct it as best I can with some very simple and resonating things. And that is why I am the best nominee that the Libertarian Party.
Well, that's funny too, because I've talked with other Libertarian candidates here on the show. I've talked with Adam Kokesh. I've talked with Max Abramson. I've been trying to get a few more of them on here to push a libertarian point of view, because mainstream media is dominated by this dog and pony show that's going on between the Democrats and the Republicans all the time.
Absolutely. And I feel that I am uniquely situated to be able to put that message out to the masses in a unique, entertaining, educational way. I believe that I have a serious leg up on any other candidate. And the fact of the matter is, 5% is the gold standard for a libertarian candidate in my reckoning, because that is what will most closely assure ballot access. So I look at the figures. 130 million people voted in the last presidential election. So 6.5 million would be that 5%. 3.9 million high school students graduate on any given year. So give me two of those years, say 19 and 20. Add that to the 17 million college kids that are in college in any given year. That's a pool of 25 million potential voters. And if I could get one out of 4 of those kids to vote for me, that would be your 5% right there.
Right.
Of course, I'm also believe that I poll very strongly with the disillusioned, the disenfranchised, the dejected, and the disgusted, people who want nothing to do with politics anymore. But I believe that
you're talking to one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk about it all the time, but after dealing with what I dealt with in Los Angeles, actually being involved deeply in the Republican Party there, I was so disgusted by the time I left, I never wanted to deal with politics again. But, for some reason, it always seems to dominate every conversation that I have, only because that's what I know. But, it does actually get very tiring. It does get dejecting, and it's nice to see somebody in putting in a little bit of lightheartedness into it, so to speak.
Oh yeah, no, I think I've got a lock on it, and I think there's a lot of possibilities here. I mean, heck, just I was at the Granite State Comic Con a couple weeks back, and I shared my table with the New Hampshire Libertarian Party, and we were able to increase their membership 15%. We were able to sign up some cosplay kids. And the beautiful thing about my being, or the viral thing that I've created, or the meme that I've created, or the character that I've created, and the universe of weirdness is that it's ready. It's off the shelf. It has a very huge fan base. The debate that you were referring to a little while ago up in New Hampshire, that went viral. That has had tens of millions of views, and because it was perceived to be nonpartisan, because I was not attacking either party or I was not attacking any candidate, it was definitely perceived to be nonpartisan, and people loved it across the political spectrum. And as a result, I have fans from the far right to the far left, and everything in between, and almost every demographic. And people who were kids back then, are older now, but every 4 years, more kids know me, and they teach me in the high schools, for goodness sake. It's really it's an amazing thing. I'm definitely humbled that I've been able to create something that resonates with so many people. And
you're gonna have to get your own action figure then.
Yeah. Well, one of these days. It brings hope to a lot of people. I think it gives grown-ups an opportunity to pretend a little bit. I like the fact that I haven't been eaten up by the corporate comedy world or anything like that. That it's a total grassroots, do-it-yourself, punk rock, take the piss out of the fucking power structure through sheer humor. And that sheer humor has allowed me to be, a lot more aggressive than I would normally be allowed to be. And it has given me the freedom to be as obnoxious and annoying as I want to be.
And again, shining a light on the fact that the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, the two major ones, really just don't have any intention of doing anything that they say they're going to do. Either one of them. They always end up seeming to turn around and do a 180 on you. I mean, my congressman is a complete joke. We're still fighting in wars overseas that have been going on for 17 years. And now Donald Trump's saying, we're going to pull him out of Syria. But he's got to fight. Now he's fighting both sides of Congress. And, then you turn around and you look at your campaign, and it's just kind of like, it's almost like a breath of fresh air coming into politics. And I'm just like going like, you know what? I could just do without the seriousness in politics anymore, because I don't know how anybody takes it seriously anymore.
Yeah. And of course, our speculation is that if I were to be the nominee, that it would catch like wildfire. It would be a meme-based viral media campaign, and I think it would reach a whole lot of kids, and I think it would bring in a lot of young people into the party. I believe that's another thing that I have to offer, and I've been working on that, and we'll continue to do that. And and one of the things that I've been doing is attending all these Libertarian State Party conventions, because once again, that's what you do when you're running.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have my own image problems, I suppose, and so I've been going to these events just to show the people that the boot is not always attached to my head.
Right.
Simply not, because people who only know me from the internet, that's all they know. They need to know that I'm not my character. I mean, obviously, I haven't been in capacity of my character here tonight, except for a little bit at the beginning. That I'm not always on. I'm not always disrupting things.
Right. Well, nobody can be all the time. I mean, unless that's the way they're hardwired.
Yeah, that's very true. I think maybe when I was younger and drank a little bit more, I was a little more on all the time. But now that I'm the elder statesman of Wingnuts, I don't have to try so hard. And so, I believe that I have a very serious offer to put on the table for the Libertarian Party. I mean, essentially, they are going to be given a choice at their national convention. They are going to be able to choose clearly which time stream they want to exist in. Will it be the time stream with Vermin Supreme as their presidential nominee, or is it going to be something else? I mean, how much fun do you want to have this presidential election cycle? If I am chosen, believe you me, it will be about the funnest election year ever.
Well, to me, the greatest thing would be is if the Democrats and the Republicans would have, like they did with Ross Perot, they had to allow him on the debate stage. Can you imagine Donald Trump, who's going to pick up the Republican nomination, whoever picks up the Democrat nomination, and Vermin Supreme on the debate stage, televised nationally?
And it could happen. What I have heard is that if you're polling at 15%, that could happen. And if I happen to be the nominee, I can easily see a lot of people saying they're going to vote for me just for the laughs, just for the lulls, and just to get my ass up on that debate stage.
Right.
So well, it's closer than it's ever been. Let me tell you that.
Right.
It's within
just for people who only know you from like the internet and your character and all of that. Let's flip that. What is your serious side when it comes to politics?
Well, I think you're seeing it. I think you're hearing it. You know, I've been an activist for many years. I'm very about the First Amendment. I'm all about the right of the people to freely assemble. I'm all about the freedom of speech and counter speech and heckling, of course.
Of course.
You know, and all these important constitutional guarantees that we're giving. You know, I may be an anarchist, but I'm a fairly pragmatic anarchist. I understand that we live in a society, if you will, and that we all have to figure a way to get along. I've always maintained that if we are going to be able to disengage from the government, we need to be able to parallel or provide some of the functions that the government claims for itself. You know, we have to take care of one another. We have to essentially show that we have no need for the government.
Well, that's what it used to be when the country was first founded.
Yes, I mean the bureaucracy has gotten out of control, out of hand. I mean,
it always reminds me of that scene in V for Vendetta when they had the group of people sitting around that little half round table, and John Hurt's picture was this gigantic thing on the wall, and all he told them is like, I want people to remember why they need us. And that's kind of what our government does right now. They try to make sure that people think that they need the government in order to exist, and it never used to be that way.
No, to keep you safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's that old saying? Those who are willing to give up their liberty for a little security deserve neither.
Yeah. Good old Benny Franklin. Yeah, no, it's very interesting times that we're involved in. It's very crazy acceleration of everything. You know, the information age has really given a lot of people more information than we even know how to deal with, you know, or that we can even process. I mean,
I can't even keep up with it. I don't get onto the internet as much as a lot of people do, and I can barely keep up with what comes my way.
Absolutely.
I don't know how some of these kids are doing. I mean, they're staring into their cell phones all day long. I guess that's how they keep up with it, but I couldn't do that all day. I got other things to do too.
Absolutely. Real world things in meat world.
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, it would be nice to take some of these kids out to some of those little rainbow get-togethers and, you know, check your cell phone at the door.
Absolutely. Yeah, you need to be out in nature. It's,
you know.
I don't know. It just seems like people are always of the impression that things are the way they are and that they will always be that way, but you know, things couldn't be further from the truth, and I think that's one of the things that I try and present in my presentation. You know, I mean, you know, why is the monetary system like it is? Why don't we have a voting-based economy? We can pay for all these wars. Why can't the government afford to give you voting? When you break down the figures, and they can do that.